We want to now solve this equation, and it's going to end up being a quadratic equation, although when you look at it initially, it's probably not obvious, but as it turns out, eventually you will see that it turns into a quadratic equation, and then we want to solve it by factoring. So let's talk about this for just a minute, because this is different than the first two problems we solved, the first two quadratic equations we solved by factoring. In this case, I have some rational expressions. So now we have to go back, and basically this is a problem where we're going to solve this equation with rational expressions. Hopefully you all remember the steps we go through. The first step is to factor, and then find the LCD, and then multiply both sides by the LCD, because that clears the fractions. And then we have an equation which we can solve. So let's go ahead and do that. So first of all, we need to factor anything possible. The only thing I can see that factors is the denominator on the right-hand side, x squared plus 3x. So let's go ahead and factor out the x. So that ends up becoming x times x plus 3. So now we have to find the LCD. You simply write down the first denominator, x plus 3. I go to the second denominator. I need an x. I look at my LCD. I do not have an x yet, so I put the x in there. The third term, there is no denominator. And then on the right-hand side, when I look at my denominator, it's x over x plus 3. Well, that's already what my LCD is. So therefore, my LCD is going to be x times x plus 3. Now, if you recall, what we're going to do is multiply both sides by the LCD. So I don't want to rewrite this, so I'm going to try and stick this in here. X times x plus 3 on the left-hand side, and then x times x plus 3 on the right-hand side. And now, on the left-hand side, I have three terms inside the parenthesis. So I multiply the first term. The x plus 3's cancel out. I'm left with x times 2x, which is 2x squared. And now, when I multiply the second term, x times x plus 3 times 5 over x, the x's cancel out, and I'm left with 5 times x plus 3. And now I multiply the last term in here, end up with negative 4x times x plus 3. Now, the right-hand side looks like x times x plus 3 cancels out with the whole denominator, and we're just left with 18. So we've now cleared the fractions. So now I'm going to multiply out these parentheses and see if we can solve this equation. So 2x squared plus 5x plus 15 minus 4x squared minus 12 equals 18. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to combine like terms on the left-hand side. I have 2x squared minus 4x squared, so negative 2x squared. I just have the 5x by itself, and then 15 minus 12. Now, you can see, lo and behold, we ended up with a quadratic equation. So I've got x squared here. Now, when I solve a quadratic equation by factoring, I really want my leading coefficient, my first term, to be positive. So let's move everything to the right-hand side, because of course when we solve a quadratic equation by factoring, we have to get everything on one side. So let's just put everything on the right-hand side. So I subtract 3, so I'm left with 15 over here. And now you notice I've got to do a little bit of work because I have a coefficient for the square term. There is no GCF, since it is a trinomial. I'm going to use product sum. Thus my product is going to be 2 times 15, which is 30. And my sum is going to be minus 5. Now when I look at this, from my past experience, I'm not sure I have any factors that work for this. So this is where, when you work in a problem like this, you go back and wonder if you made a math error. So first of all, make sure I copied the problem down correctly. And then make sure I multiplied correctly. This is 3 minus 4x plus 3. There they come over here, so minus 4x squared minus 12 equals 18. Then negative 2x squared plus 5x. Aha! See my mistake? This is perfect. What is negative 4x times 3? Negative 12x. So therefore, 5x minus 12x is going to be minus 7x, and then I have the 15 right here. Now, let's try this again. Move everything to the right-hand side. 0 equals 2x squared plus 7x plus 3. And now, the product I'm looking for is 6. And the sum I'm looking for is 7. So my two factors would be 6 and 1. So now, to factor this, I write the first term and the last term, and I split up the middle term. I'll go ahead and do it, maybe x plus 6x. Factor by grouping, factor out the x, 2x plus 1. Factor out a 3 here, 2x plus 1. Factor out the 2x plus 1. So you have 2x plus 1 times x plus 3 equals 0. Therefore, my solutions would be, for this first parenthesis, a x of negative 1/2 is going to cause that to be 0. And my second parenthesis, negative 3. Now, here's the danger. It feels like you're done. You solved the equation. You've got two solutions. But when I go back and look at this original problem, it had these rational expressions. I could have, at the beginning, and probably should have made a note of what x cannot be. Because when I looked at my original equation, I know that x, I can never have a denominator be 0. So for x plus 3, therefore I know x cannot equal negative 3. And then for this x down here and also over here, I know x also cannot be 0. So now I went and did all my math and look at my two solutions. Negative 1/2 and negative 3. But you know what I just said? X cannot equal negative 3. So this, as it turns out, even though the math gave me a result of minus 3, it is actually not a solution. And I simply have one solution of x equals negative 1/2. All right, so that goes back now to solving an equation with rational expressions. You always have to check your solutions, or what we said before is to check your domain.